what you're concerned about me putting in my coffee? Now might be a good time for us to talk about dairy and Crohn's disease and what's the real truth, what's the science, and is this hurting my disease? While I enjoy my coffee with cream, let's talk about dairy, shall we? There is so much on the internet about dairy and inflammatory bowel disease, dairy and inflammation, dairy and autoimmune disorders. What is the answer? The very first thing that I do want to talk about is I want to talk about the MAP protein, the MAP infection, Mycoavium parabacterium tuberculosis. Paratuberculosis is not the same as intestinal tuberculosis that can get mistaken for Crohn's disease. It is not the same as tuberculosis itself. It is a protein that historically has been spread by cows and dairy. And it is found in research that this protein is found more often in Crohn's patients. It is unknown, to be honest, it is unknown whether or not it causes Crohn's disease, whether there is an association. There's an association, but it's unknown what the causal factor is. And I believe there are vaccine studies underway as to whether or not this can cure Crohn's disease, either in some or all patients. Okay, so that is out there, and it is a player, and it's in the game. But what I also do have to say is that there's been studies on antibiotics for MAP protein that have not proven to be long-term effective against MAP. And I don't know if those studies include people eliminating dairy from their diet, but additionally, we can get this MAP protein from our drinking water. So unless you want to completely stop drinking anything and dehydrate yourself to death and die, I don't think it's impossible to avoid consuming the MAP protein. So whether or not it's a causal factor, I don't know, but it's not just dairy that has the issue here. So with all of that being said, let's get into the rest of the nitty-gritty science. Lactose intolerance, throwing that out there too. Let's throw out all of the things, all of the knowns, okay? People with Crohn's disease have an increased chance of being lactose intolerant because of the damage to our intestinal wall, to our intestinal cells. So you may be lactose intolerant because of Crohn's. That's a fact. So don't eat high lactose things. Don't drink milk. Don't drink a bunch of milk because it is high in lactose. Don't eat a bunch of ice cream, which I wouldn't recommend, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But like half and half, not very high in lactose, especially a small amount of it. Cheese, not very high in lactose. Yogurt, already fermented, not likely going to cause you problems if you're lactose intolerant. I am not pro-dairy. Let's get that statement out there. I've never been pro-dairy. So it's not that I'm like, I love dairy and I'm not funded by any dairy council. I'm anti the dairy council, if anything, because I think they might be spreading some misinformation. I'm not a dairy RD. I'm not a dairy farmer. I'm not like I love dairy. In fact, for a lot of my life before Crohn's disease, I was anti-dairy. I was very big into almond milk and soy milk and finding alternatives to dairy. So just a little bit about me background. Ulcerative colitis and dairy. Now this video is about Crohn's and dairy, but as a note for ulcerative colitis, there is more of a connection to dairy. So I would recommend with ulcerative colitis patients to avoid dairy in their diet. All of that being said, let's go over some science. So the first article that I'm going to talk about, they looked at the intakes of milk, yogurt, and kefir. And what happened was they found an increase in beneficial bacteria. And one study showed a reduction in pathogenic bacteria with the intake of yogurt. Neither whey protein nor casein modulated the microbiome in a positive or negative way. So if you're worried about whether or not you're taking whey protein or casein protein, or if you're doing partial animal nutrition and you're worried about the casein protein and with the Crohn's disease exclusion diet, wondering why that's okay and dairy is not, the protein itself hasn't shown to be an issue. One study did show a reduction in bacterial diversity, and that is with the consumption of milk itself. Not yogurt, not kefir, but drinking milk itself. And then the second article we're going to look at is that kefir intake was associated with a reduction in zonulin. And if you don't know what zonulin is a protein that is associated with intestinal permeability. It's why a lot of people with Crohn's avoid gluten, because they're worried that gluten will increase intestinal permeability. The study showed that a reduction in zonulin occurred with the intake of fermented dairy products. So kefir probably would happen with yogurt as well. And additionally, kefir intake was associated with improved mood. And when they compared that to milk intake directly, they showed that milk intake reduced mood. So key takeaway from all of this is don't drink milk. I don't recommend you drink milk. However, a yogurt a day, positive modulation of the microbiome with the increase in the probiotics in the yogurt and also in kefir. So I do recommend yogurt a day. A little bit of cheese. Go watch my video on fat and Crohn's if you're worried about it. I don't recommend a high fat diet. Obviously, I recommend a lower fat diet. So if you're going to eat cheese a very small amount a couple times a week, I wouldn't do it daily. I wouldn't go hog wild on it. Don't throw it in all of your dishes. Just a little bit of snacking cheese here and there would probably be the best way to do it. And then additionally, dairy. The other reason why I think it gets a bad rap is dairy often has additives of emulsifiers, especially ice cream. I don't know if there's an ice cream on the market that doesn't have an emulsifier in it. So for that purpose, I definitely would recommend staying away from any dairy with food additives. A lot of yogurts too tend to have less yogurt. Some of them don't even have probiotics in them at all. So make sure that you're very careful onto your yogurt selections. I do recommend Chobani and I recommend Fage yogurt. Both of them are very good, especially the plain, and then adding your own sweetener like honey or maple syrup would be a good way to go. Baking with it, putting it into smoothies. Those are also great ways to use yogurt. And so all of that being said, a couple of tablespoons of half and half in your coffee adds some delicious flavor, and I don't think it's going to hurt your disease state at all. So be sure to like this video if it helped you out and cleared up some information for you. Subscribe if you are new for new updated videos coming your way, and I hope it helped. Leave a comment, please, if you have anything to add to this discussion, or if anything was helpful for you, please let me know, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.